Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about the alt-right versus the alt-light with a special guest. Reporter and internet personality Lauren Southern is joining us, which is going to be great. We'll get to her soon, but first, let me set the stage here a little bit. What inspired this video for me was a clip I came across from the Nationalist Review podcast, hosted by my buddy James Alsup and his friend Nick Fuentes. They were talking to the left wing's boogeyman himself, Richard Spencer, and he had some very interesting things to say about yours truly. This is Richard in the middle of a conversation about last week's story about Red Pill Black, aka Candace Owens.
She's lied about me, so she's claimed that and I think Paul Joseph Watson claimed this as well, that I am like leading the charge against this woman because of my irrational hatred of all black people or something. So basically, I actually learned about her by watching a video by a YouTuber called No Bullshit.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, and
ding.
Just as a quick digression, if the alt-light, quote unquote, were like people like No Bullshit and some others, I would never criticize them. Because you don't have to be like full-on alt-right, full-on Spencerian, full-on identitarian. Like that's fine if you just want to do your thing. But like No Bullshit, he's just a down-to-earth guy. He's like right-wing sensibilities, but he's not really that ideological. That's fine. He does like good videos. Like I've started to actually watch him, and he's pretty funny actually. And so I learned about him by watching his video, and then I tweeted out his video.
So apparently the whole reason Candace Owens thought Richard Spencer was out to get her was because he tweeted my video. Very interesting. In fact, I'm flattered. But what I find more intriguing here is Spencer's comments about the alt-light, which he criticized heavily in the past.
So these people don't ultimately believe in free speech. They're ultimately cucks, they're ultimately wimps. They're also just ultimately bad people. I mean, if you meet Jack Posobiec, Mike Cernovich, they're just liars, they're con artists, they're freaks. It's just, they're not the people we want to be associated with. So I'm ultimately glad this happened. Because the move alt-right will be better when we just cut away these people who are going to weigh us down.
Shots fired. Now, I'm not trying to say Spencer is the end-all be-all of right-wing politics, but he is certainly one of the biggest figureheads of the alt-right, a term he popularized, by the way. So when he says things like, if people in the alt-light were more like No Bullshit, I wouldn't criticize them, I think it means something. Now, to be clear, the alt-right or alternative right is a loosely defined group of people with far-right ideologies who reject mainstream conservatism in favor of white nationalism. The alt-light, however, are their more moderate counterparts, somewhere in between the alt-right and the center. Gavin McInnes did a good job spelling out these differences in a video earlier this year. He also placed a lot of big names along the conservative spectrum between alt-light and alt-right, including today's guest, Miss Lauren Southern. And that's why I thought it would be a perfect thing for us to talk about today. Let's go ahead and bring her on. Lauren, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. It's nice to meet you. This is very exciting. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Today we're talking about alt-right versus alt-light, and in the past, you, Lauren, have been placed more on the alt-light side of the spectrum. How do you feel about that?
I'm in this awkward position where the alt-light calls me alt-right and the alt-right calls me alt-light, so I have no home. I am a drifter. I don't know what I am. I don't know what alt-control-delete position I am placed. What I would call myself, of course, is I'm more in the nationalist, libertarian, maybe even reactionary category, whatever you want to call it. I am just small government, but also I have a lot of traditionalist values and beliefs and think that we've abandoned a lot of ideologies and ideas that were beneficial to us in the past. But I'm also very much nationalist. So I don't know what box they're going to place me in. People can put me wherever. Doesn't make a big deal to me as long as they define it accurately.
Okay. So let's talk about the differences then. Let's see. We've got alt-right, and now we've got the latter alt-light. What do you see as the main differences?
So what I've observed from the movements is alt-right obviously had a very different connotation before the election, and it was seen as more of this overarching term for people who rejected the establishment conservatives, the kind of crony capitalist neocon deep state, quote unquote, globalist types, and they wanted nothing to do with establishment conservatism because, to be honest, it doesn't represent many people anymore. What is establishment conservatism conserving other than their own popularity contest, vote counts, and mainstream media approval? Not a whole lot. So young people and, quite frankly, just normal people who have normal everyday jobs did not feel connected to the party anymore and split off into their own different realms of searching for truth and what conservatism actually means, what being right wing actually means, and kind of ended up like myself, I feel like a drifter among all these different ideas. And what happened to encompass them was they weren't this mainstream right wing, but they were something alternative to that. So alt-right became the saying for people who were alternative to the regular right. However, alt-right was a term that was already established before that, and a lot of people didn't really know about it until later on when you had the Richard Spencer characters introduced and the more white identity focused section of the right come out in full force, and alt-right took on a very, very different meaning. And now it's been this whole world of the alt-light, the alt-right, new right, whatever you want to call it. But the alt-light is the kind of rejection of the white identity politics that came about with Richard Spencer and his crew towards the election date and right after it. So that I'd say that's the biggest difference, is the alt-right rejects the white identity aspects of the alt-right, whereas the alt-right really takes white identity on as something they champion.
I think a lot of times, too, it gets misconstrued because there is certain aspects in the news and society that seems to be anti-white and against white things. So that's where I would sort of pop up and say, no, it's white's okay, or, you know, the phrase that came out last week, it's okay to be white. I think that's where it gets kind of confusing to people from the outside. Maybe there are other races or something, but it's like, it looks like if you say something like that, you're automatically alt-right, ideological, extreme on the far end. You want a white ethno-state, but really there's a middle ground there, and I think that's kind of where the alt-right settles.
Right. So, like, the alt-right rejects me for the most part. They would not call me one of them. Yet tonight, I will be going out and doing some postering for It's Okay to Be White. I think it's the perfect message because it is so simple and so subtle and yet is so effective against the enemies of the right. They just go into absolute convulsion when seeing something that says it is okay to have white skin. How hilarious is that? It makes them look like utter morons. So I think that is a perfect message that I am going to go out and help support that tonight. But I think the real nuance for me that comes in where I get rejected from the alt-light in a lot of cases is I do think that identity and history and family lines really matter and have an effect on culture and how people act and behavior and genetics.
And I'm glad we're turning to this It's Okay to Be White story. I think It's Okay to Be White could be a good alt-light kind of message. What I always found interesting about it, since it's been coming around these last few days, is it's not even saying, you know, it's great to be white, or white power, or white is awesome. It's just simply, it's okay to be white. So it's like, you're not bad for being white. And that's the kind of sentiment you see in a lot of places in the news. And you see people pushing things like the Black Lives Matter. And it pretty much just plays against all those people. And when they react this bad, it's pretty hilarious.
Right. And you know what? When it comes to something like Black Lives Matter, like a lot of people were responding to me saying, "Oh, well, Lauren, you're offended by Black Lives Matter. So why should Black Lives Matter be offensive and It's Okay to Be White not be offensive?" And I'd say the difference there is it's Okay to Be White hasn't really become a movement with political motives yet, where they've literally like killed cops in the streets and are chanting for the bodies of dead police officers and such. So it's a little different in context there. I mean, once It's Okay to Be White becomes a movement like that, yeah, sure, we'll be having a very different conversation. But that very simple message Man, it's been so unbelievably effective. And the sad part is that it genuinely isn't okay to be white on college campuses today.
If you're that offended by that, I don't know what if there's some kind of warped rhetoric that's been going on for so long, or it's just these safe spaces have become so like, they've coddled these people for so long, these college students and whatever communities. This is offensive. It's okay to be white is making people cry.
Well, you don't have to wonder if there's some warped rhetoric going on. There is some warped rhetoric going on, and it's these tenured hippies from the 70s, these Marxist professors that can't be fired, going in there and literally telling students, we need to dismantle the white nuclear family. We need to destroy whiteness itself. We need to get rid of masculinity and all these things. This was what I was taught in university, and it's only gotten worse from here. It's that's something. It shocks me to go and speak at campuses today. And I mean, I was just speaking at University of Minnesota, and I had like 300 people outside screaming and punching people that were coming into my speech. I don't even find myself. I'm like an internet Canadian YouTuber. It's crazy that many people would show up in freaking Minnesota in the cold. But it's gotten so much worse on campuses. When I talk to these kids, they tell me they're doing tests in their class telling them how privileged they are versus how oppressed their friends are. And I mean, I did that in a class in high school, the last year I was in high school. But it's shocking that that kind of nonsense is being taken to a university level, a place of education, a place of higher learning.
Let's jump back to conservatism for a minute. Do you think it's okay? We were talking about it's okay to be white. Do you think it's okay to be right? So right-wing,
Like right-wing?
conservative? Yeah. Do you think that is, in a way, demonized as well?
Well, I mean, I think it's okay to be right. Does popular culture think it's okay to be right? In both contexts of that word, as in just being factual and being right-wing, I don't think society as a whole does believe that. I think facts have become a very, very offensive thing, and we've been taught to step around them carefully and not talk about things too much, like the fact that two genders exist, the fact that women on average make less than men because they're less intelligent, not as strong, less likely to do risky jobs, so on and so on, have children. These facts and just being right about that is highly unacceptable in society, and you will be rejected from all popular media, any academic circles, any government circles, even most private workplaces will reject you for that kind of nonsense. And certainly if you come out as right wing and say these things proudly from the label of conservative, that is a word that is offensive. And repeatedly is becoming more and more offensive. I mean, we're trying to normalize it online. There's, of course, the YouTube movement that is coming out there with truth. And I think we're winning Gen Z. Shout out to the Gen Zers watching this if you're out there.
Let's see. I wanted to end a little bit more on the alt-light. We got the alt-light, and that's a name that's been kind of, I think, has a bad connotation to it nowadays. I'm not sure if it offends anyone, but it seems to be used derogatory. Do you think there's a chance of rebranding this? Because I feel like alt-light kind of sounds like Bud Light. We all know Bud Light tastes like piss water. So what do you think? Is there possible to have like some kind of new name? Do you think the new right might work? I know that has been played around before, but what are your thoughts on that?
I've been meaning to talk about the new right for a long time because the funny thing is we've started calling it the new right, but the new right isn't so new if you know anything about recent history of American politics. In fact, the new right, this one that we're in right now, which people have started calling, quote unquote, the alt-right, is the third wave of the new right. The first one started around Barry Goldwater, who was the Trump of his time. Very anti-globalist, opposed the New Deal, grassroots kind of movement, hated the Rockefeller types in the government at the time.
Okay.
That was the first new right, and they all started around the National Review. It's actually, there's so many parallels. History always repeats itself. it started around a mismatched group of libertarians, anti-communists, so basically the anti-SJWs of the time, conservatives and traditionalists, and they all banded together. But eventually they unfortunately collapsed and failed because a lot of it got taken over by hucksters and sycophants and people who didn't have genuine intentions for the movement. And also they became more focused on just being this cohesive group that just got votes and won elections, and they'd always be using direct mail and just like get Reagan in office, and nothing else mattered. And it kind of was like the dog chasing the car, and once they caught the car, they didn't know what to do with it. And I'm seeing so many repeats here with the Trump election. We're like a dog that's chased a car, we've caught it, and now that we have the car, we don't know what to do with it, and the movement is falling apart behind it. And this alt-right or new right is facing the same fate as the new right of old. I truly believe it's being taken over by sycophants and hucksters and people who, instead of using the internet and followers and everything as a caveat to promote their ideology, they're using that ideology as a caveat to promote their followers and their campaigns.
Yeah, I think end of the day, new blood, new conservatives, people getting red pilled, that's always a good thing. It's good to get votes and have people come to the right side. And like the phrase I mentioned before, it's okay to be right. I think that's not just conservative right, that's correct. It's okay to be accurate, and
yes,
and I think right and conservative are synonyms for a reason, if you ask me. That's a great talk, great points. Was there any other topics or questions you wanted to cover today? Anything we didn't get to go over?
I did do a video on this on my channel talking about why I believe infighting is okay, as much as that's not a great word. So people can feel free to check that out if they want. And we will have more content. The two of us are going to be doing a live stream, which will be great. So that'll awesome. Probably be up by the time this video is, so people can check that out as well.
Definitely check out Lauren's channel. We're gonna have a link below. I'll also link the live stream which we did over the weekend. Great stuff. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
That was Lauren Southern, everyone. You can find her videos on YouTube, link in the description below. We did a stream there over the weekend, which I highly suggest you check out. So, what do you guys think about the alt-right versus the alt-light? Is Richard Spencer right? Is no bullshit the new model for alt-lighters? Or as I prefer to call it, the new right, because people like that new. Comment your thoughts below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. And one final announcement before we go. I decided to make some new t-shirts for you guys to get for the holiday season. In addition to our wonderful No Bullshit logo on shirts, sweaters, and mugs, I've also designed a new series called It's Okay to Be Right, because not only is it okay to be right as in correct, it's also okay to be right-wing and conservative. Buy your own It's Okay to Be Right shirt, sweater, mug, or sticker today, and get it delivered to you in time for the holidays. Thanks again for watching today's episode. Have a great day, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. We are living in strange times. I'm sorry. I just realized I called Croatians the Mexicans of Europe like a minute ago, and I want to take a moment to apologize and say that was just one letter that I read written by an English guy about gum fields a while ago. So, Bog, I apologize, y'all. Croatians are great.
Okay, noted. I'm sure you just meant that as an example, too. Hopefully all the Croatian fans out there watching take no offense. They know. They're smart guys. They're subscribed here.
They're very nationalistic. They're great. They're doing a good job, like Poland and Hungary and the rest of them, fighting off mass immigration and leftist policies there. So